I saw your last video on solving a mystery on Minecraft and was wondering if you could help me. About a week ago, my friend started sending me videos. At first, I thought it was a joke, but as time went on, he stopped messaging me. The last thing anyone has seen or heard from him is in these videos. If you could try to figure out what's going on, I would appreciate it. Here's the link to the channel. Usually, I wouldn't respond to something like this, but curiosity got the best of me, so I clicked the link, and it brought me to a channel. The channel DSMPDan has 8 videos on it, each one getting creepier than the last. The first video on these channels usually doesn't have much going on, but this is the complete opposite. To start off the first video, Dan sorts his chest and walks into his room to write a journal. Day 1 on donutsmp. Flamer and I built this base and I really like how it turned out. I bought Donut Plus. Flamer logged off, so I am alone now. I see everyone making stashes, so I might as well. Something's off. Things are moving and changing. I'm going to record to try and catch what's causing it. Maybe it's an admin? At first, I thought he was going crazy. Weird stuff happening, things moving, changing. On donutsmp, that's just doesn't happen. But as soon as he went out of his room, I could tell that he wasn't lying. If you look at the bottom left corner of the screen, you can see that the fence post was actually changed to oak instead of spruce, which is very strange and just doesn't happen in Minecraft, unless it was caused by a player. I bought this clock since we're underground, so I can tell time. I don't know why he's trying to sleep on donutsmp. It's always something with the beds in these. You know what? Probably something is gonna happen and he's gonna wake up somewhere else. Yeah, so he slept in a bed and wakes up in a weird room. 12 different hallways, and all of them are just weirder than the last. They all lead to something different, something just very strange. I've never seen anything like this before. Nothing to this scale. Just from this clip here, you can tell that he can't place blocks because you can see that he's trying to do that. So I'm guessing that he's in adventure mode. He walks around the room for a second and then just ends the video. Dan starts off the next video by testing out if he can place blocks or not. Maybe I have to wait for nighttime to get back. For now, I might just explore. Dan walks down the first hallway into a different, smaller hallway with a ton of different doors. Each door leads to a long, narrow hallway. After opening the doors on the sides of the hallway, he comes to the end of the hallway and sees that there's one last door unopened. He opens it to find something different, a large black room with a blue wall at the back. There's another door at the back of the room blocked by parkour, and if he falls into the void. I think that's the void. When he walks through the door, he sees a ton of trees, grass, and a path. It looks like the overworld, but if someone was trying to make it, but just couldn't get it right. He walks down the dark path and finds a house. He walks inside and there's signs. The first sign reads, "Turn back." There's another sign after that, but it just is random numbers, and so I'm just gonna ignore it. But when he walks up the stairs, he turns around and the lights just turn off. They're just gone. And there's a sign that says, "It's too late." He reaches the attic and finds a lectern. When he opens the lectern, all that we can see are random letters and numbers that don't mean anything. Except for, it does mean something. When I run it through a keyboard cipher, it says, "I've locked all of them. Some end, some lie. One watches back. Do not go down hallway 3. It looks normal because it remembers you. I stopped sleeping. Sometimes I'm standing somewhere else when I wake up. Sometimes I wake up already walking. If you are reading this, you still have time. Turn around. Leave one hallway unexplored." With nothing left to do, Dan walks down the staircase to the second floor. When he's walking down to the first floor, he hears a scream. The scream startles Dan and he starts running towards the exit. I don't know what could have made a sound like that, and definitely nothing that's in normal Minecraft, which proves that there's an entity in his world. Dan runs down the hallway and safely back to the starting point. The thing I don't understand is that I'm still on donutsmp. And then Dan ends the video. The next video starts off with him being in a different position than last time. This indicates that there's been some time in between each clip. Finally, it's nighttime. I hope this works. Dan thinks that sleeping in the bed will make him wake up back in his base, which isn't a bad idea. He proves his theory right since some weird glitches happen and he gets teleported back to his base randomly during his sleep, but only for a second. Wait, it actually works for a second. With nothing else to do, he goes into the second hallway. At the end, he sees a lot of bookshelves. Well, it did say library. Dan starts walking down the long room, and then he looks to his side and sees bedrock. That's literally impossible in Minecraft. How did they get that there? Dan seems just as confused as I am, questioning how is that even real? How is it possible? Dan walks for around 5 minutes until he finally sees something different. Except for it's not totally different because it's still just an infinite pattern of bookshelves. When he looks to his right, he actually finds something different. An empty room with a lectern at the end. Last time I opened one of these, something screamed at me. Screw it, I'm opening it. The book has a lot of text in it, 13 pages, and each one has an entity on it. Entity 1 is the forest, Entity 2 is the library, Entity 3 is just random letters and numbers, which I'm guessing that's because it says don't go in Entity 3, or Hallway 3, which I'm guessing each entity is tied to one hallway. Each entity also has a danger level and a way to escape, except for every single one just says unknown on how to escape. But the danger level is very important because that makes him able to know which ones not to go into, except for it kind of just stops after page 6, so it's not very useful. Dan looks at his clock and sees that it's almost nighttime, so he starts on his journey back to the main room. Since it almost worked last night with the sleeping theory, he's trying to do it again, which actually it works further this time. Since he didn't fully get teleported back to his base, he ends the video. If you've made it this far into the video, please consider subscribing. This video took me like 40 hours to edit and make, so I would appreciate it. I went back through my footage of episode 1. I decrypted some of the text in the book. All I could find out was, don't go down hallway 3. Following the warning from the book, Dan decides to instead go to hallway 4. If we look back to the book, we can see that number 4 is the caves, which very much matches the description of what we're looking at here. An infinite pattern of the same cave over and over and over again. Except for at the beginning of the cave, you can see something right there. A ton of item frames. At first, I had no clue what this meant, but after a few hours of trying different codes, I finally realized that the first letter of each item makes a sentence. He who controls the board controls the game. Dan stupidly decides to go inside of the cave, which I don't know why he would do that when the danger level is unknown. But he does it anyways, and luckily, he just explores around for a few minutes and then just leaves. And by leaves, I mean dies, which this will have a consequence later on, but for now, dying doesn't really matter to him. After that death, he just decides to end the video. Maybe I won't go in. Remember when I said earlier that dying would have consequences? Well, this is the consequence. I think that him being in hardcore is to prevent him from escaping by death or pearling out or something like that. Even with being in hardcore mode, he decides to go down the hallway. When Dan gets to the end of the hallway, he sees a sign. The sign has a ton of numbers on it. When I was decoding it, I realized that each number represents a letter. A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3, and so on, A to Z. So if you turn these numbers into letters, it says the code. Above the sign, there's 1 netherite boot, 1 wooden axe, and 1 netherite helmet. I can only guess that these are part of the code since it says the code underneath it, which after a while I actually did figure out what the code meant. Netherite boots give you 7 protection in total, 3 plus 3 plus 1. Same with the netherite helmet, and the axe has 7 attack damage, which may be a hint leading to the 7th hallway. Dan walks into the mine shafts being very careful. He walks for a while looking very paranoid, watching behind him just in case he sees something. After a few minutes of walking, he sees something in the distance, and it sees him back. Dan runs all the way back to his bed. Now I understand why the danger level is so high. This time when Dan sleeps, nothing happens. Confused, he ends the video. By this point, Dan has fallen into a routine. Sleep, explore a hallway, repeat. Dan types in chat that there is no information on the 6th page. This means that he's going in blind. At the end of the hallway, there's a large room filled with skyscrapers made out of white concrete, glitched glass, and glitched doors. Dan goes in further to explore the room, genuinely surprised by its scale. After confirming that it's just an infinite copy of the skyscrapers, he decides to leave. I'm guessing it goes on forever, just like every other room. Dan gets back to the bed, but it's daytime, so he can't sleep. With this in mind, he just ends the video. Waited for nighttime for this video. Hopefully this works. I think I'm getting closer. Well, it's day, so I might as well explore hallway 7. The next room he's about to explore is insane. It changes my entire understanding of what this place is. I'll get to that later, but for now, we just have to wait to the end to figure out what the entire picture is and what's going on. There is light, so it's safe? You're not going crazy. That's literally the back rooms in Minecraft. Like, what? I'm so confused. First we have the hallways, then we have the forest, then the library, and the caves, and now the back rooms? Like, what? I'm so genuinely confused. Dan walks very far into the back rooms, maybe too far, because what he comes upon is actually just crazy. Like, how does this even exist? How is it that big? Dan walks around for a couple of seconds, sees a wither skeleton, and just runs to the exit. Just like the other videos, he walks back to the bed, waits for nighttime, and then goes to sleep. This time, he gets teleported for an even longer amount of time. So close! And then he ends the video. To give you a basic rundown of what happened in the first 10 seconds of the video, he tries to sleep but it doesn't work, so he gets annoyed and goes into the 8th hallway. At the other side, he sees a large wall with deep slate tiles and a door in the middle. This door is different than the other ones though. It has a pressure plate, which can only mean one thing. It's trapped. When he stands on the second pressure plate, it instantly changes the door to a fence post, blocking him from being able to get out. Left with no choice, he goes further into the room, not knowing what dangers it could hold. When Dan zooms in his POV, he sees a warden in the distance, which will be a huge problem seeing as he can't even escape if he wanted. Dan starts exploring the area and finds a bookshelf in the first room with a book that reads,
"Escape before he finds you."
How do I escape? After searching around the room for a few minutes for any clues on how to escape, he finally sees something. A lever. Even though this could be Dan's way to escape this in place entirely, he doesn't click it for fear that it could be a trap. What if it blows me up? Dan continues for around 30 seconds more looking for anything else that could at all help him, but finally he comes to the conclusion that this lever is his only chance, so he decides to flick it. Screw it. The lever did absolutely nothing. Literally nothing. It just, I don't know why it's there if it's just not going to do anything, but he decides to head back to the door to see if it changed anything, and lo and behold, it didn't. But something strange happens when he presses the pressure plate again. The door unblocks and he's able to escape. Since he escaped the room and it was turning nighttime, he decided to head back to his bed. When he reaches his bed, he tries to sleep again because that's the only thing he can do, and he's hoping that this time it'll actually TP him back to his base. But alas, it doesn't, and this time it doesn't even work. Why didn't it work? Nothing happened. I'm so done with this! Slowly losing hope, he ends the video. The last video on Dan's channel starts off with him leaving the 12th hallway. He opens his book and reveals that he has explored every corridor at this point. He writes down the information on the last page, then he debates whether or not he should go into the 3rd corridor. After not much thought, he decides that he's going to do it. Little does he know that it was a big mistake. I've explored every room, other than 3. Maybe it's a way to escape. I can't take another week. This is the last time I'm even going to try this. I don't even know what I expected. That wasn't there before. When Dan enters the hallway, he walks for a few seconds and then turns around to see something very strange. When Dan turns around, he's horrified to see that the entrance is blocked off with glitched blocks. Even worse, a second later the chat says,
Run.
He starts running. When he looks back, the lights are disappearing behind him. At the end of the hallway, there's a door, and when he opens the door, it's blurred, so you can't see anything, but leave your comments down below on your theories on what's happening. That's the end of the video. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it.